everyone, my name is Sarah, and today we're going to be reading an article about the history of golf. So I've actually never played golf on a real golf course. I've played Wii golf, I've played screen golf, but I didn't really know a whole lot about this sport until recently. So it was really interesting to read this article about the history of golf. I didn't know that it went back so far. So just like last week, we're going to be reading the article one time all the way through, and then I'm going to explain each sentence one by one. Okay? Are you ready? Let's go. Golf is a sport where players use clubs to hit balls into holes on a course. It is the only ball sport that intentionally makes varied terrains a key challenge. Players aim to get as little strokes as possible, which means getting a ball immediately into the hole is ideal. The ancient history behind golf is unknown. Some believe the sport originates from a Roman game where players used bent sticks to hit leather balls. Others claim it originated from a Chinese game called Chuiwan. What is certain is that the modern version of golf came from Scotland. The first written record about golf comes from 1457, when James II of Scotland banned the sport for being a distraction when learning archery. Years later, his grandson, James IV, became a golfer and lifted the ban in 1502. Around this time, golf clubs began to emerge. Many historians believe that golf began to spread globally after James IV of Scotland succeeded to the throne of England in 1603. So it's a lot of interesting stuff in this article, but some of it is a little bit complicated, so we're going to go over it just one more time. Okay? Are you ready? Okay, so the first sentence is, golf is a sport where players use clubs to hit balls into holes on a course. So with other sports, for instance, soccer, we say that soccer is played on a soccer field, or that basketball is played in a basketball court. However, golf has its own special word to describe the location that the game is played, and it's called a golf course. So don't say golf court, don't say golf field. It sounds a little bit weird, so if you want to sound the most natural in English, you could say that it's a golf course. So what is golf exactly? You can see in the photo that golf is a sport where players use clubs, so like a stick, to hit balls into holes on a course. So they use the stick or the club right here to hit this tiny little ball into this tiny little hole. So it's actually really difficult. It's not quite like basketball where you have to run really fast, or soccer where you have to work with a lot of teammates. It's just one person, one hole, one ball. So it requires a lot of concentration and focus to play well. So in what other ways is golf unique? Well, it is the only ball sport that internationally makes varied terrains a key challenge. So for instance, usually when you play soccer or tennis or basketball, the court or the field for the game is usually internationally standardized. So it's the same exact thing everywhere that you go. A soccer field in Japan will look the same as a soccer field in the United States, and a basketball court in China will look the same as a basketball court in Italy. However, with golf, it's a little bit different, because golf, you need a lot of land to play, right? And obviously, you can't make the land exactly the same in every place. So they use the land itself to actually become a part of the game. And that is called varied terrains. So varied means diverse, means lots of different types. And then terrain, it literally describes the shape of the earth. It comes from the Latin root terra, right here. This means earth. So the terrain is like hills or the flat land, what kind of trees, etc. So we can see that here's one type of terrain. Here's another one. You see, this one has lots of hills. This one is very flat, even though they're both golf courses. And here, this one looks really, really difficult. There's actually water inside of the golf course. So this could be really fun and interesting to play on, I think, but also really, really challenging. So it's cool because these different types of terrain are actually part of the game itself, and it makes it even more fun. However, it also makes it really hard to practice, because if you practice golf in the golf course near your house, it might not, maybe it looks like this, but then the tournament could be somewhere like this. So it's very difficult to become a pro at golf. So I have a lot of respect for golf players. So how is golf played exactly? Players aim to get as little strokes as possible, which means getting a ball immediately into a hole is ideal. So in other sports, you want more points, right? So in soccer, you want the ball to go into the goal more times, get more points, so your team will win. However, with golf, it's actually the opposite. So you want to get as low a score as possible in order to win. And that's because when you're playing golf, you want to hit the ball as few times as possible, hit it with as few strokes. A stroke is that kind of motion. So when you swing the golf club, that's called a stroke. So in golf, you want to have as few strokes as possible. You don't want, if you're hitting the ball a lot of times, that means you're not very good at golf. So obviously, it's better if you just get a few or even one, the mythical hole-in-one, which is very, very difficult to get. So that's why getting a ball immediately or as soon as possible into the hole is ideal. So let's talk about the history of golf. The ancient history behind golf is unknown. So we actually don't know exactly where golf started, in what part of the world. We don't know when. It's a little bit murky, a little bit hazy. So you can see historians, they're trying to look back into the history of golf. We don't know. There's a lot of things that we're not certain about yet. So some people have different ideas. Some people believe that the sport originates or comes from a Roman game where players used bent sticks to hit leather balls. So here is Emperor Julius Caesar. I may have edited the photo a little bit. Before he was holding a spear or like a knife, and I made it so he's holding a golf club and a golf ball. I don't know. I thought it was fun. So some people think that people like Julius Caesar might have played an ancient form of golf using a stick that looks a lot like a modern golf club and a leather ball that is kind of similar to the golf ball. Who knows? But not everyone agrees with that. Others claim it originated from a Chinese game called Chuiwan. So here you can see an ancient court painting of people playing a game that looks really similar to golf. So here you can see the golf course. It's kind of like mini golf. It looks kind of fun. So I guess maybe this is the emperor and his aides all playing a game that looks very similar to golf. So there's little flags, little holes, little sticks, etc. And if you look close, I mean, it looks pretty similar, right? Even the shape is the same, the flags are the same. So I can see why historians would think that it came from China. But because we're not absolutely certain about that, we don't know for sure, we have to go a little bit more recently into history. So what is certain is that the modern version of golf came from Scotland. So we looked at some pictures of the Romans and the Chinese playing golf, and it looked similar to the golf that we know today, but it's not exactly the same. So one thing that we know for certain, even though historians disagree about whether the ancient origins of golf are from China or the Roman Empire, we know for sure that the modern version of golf, the version of golf that we play today, came from Scotland. So here you can see a photo of some Scottish men wearing a kilt. It looks like a skirt. It's not a skirt, it's a kilt, and it's the traditional clothing of the Scots. You see, they're playing golf on the golf course. The first written record about golf comes from 1457, when James II of Scotland banned the sport for being a distraction when learning archery. So there are quite a few tricky words in here, so let's go through it slowly. So the written record. So back in, the 1400s, they didn't have cameras. It's not like they could just take a photo of something or upload a video to YouTube and then historians can look at that. We didn't have that back then. So the best form of proof that we have about a certain concept or a game is to look at the written record. So what was written by the people of that time? And the first written record about golf comes from 1457, when James II, it's called a Roman numeral, so it looks like two L's next to each other, but it's read 2 actually. When James II of Scotland banned the sport. He banned it. So to ban in English, it means 금지하다. You could say, no, it's not allowed anymore. You can't do it. I won't give you permission. So why did he do that? Golf is fun. Why was he trying to ruin everyone's fun? Well, James II thought that golf was a distraction for people learning archery. So I think I know this word very well, distraction. So a distraction is something that causes you to lose focus. So hopefully nothing is serving as a distraction from you watching this video, but if it is, I understand. Sometimes I'm doing homework and I think, oh, like what is that? And I look up a picture on Google and then I click a video and then for 2 hours I'm on YouTube and I end up not doing my homework at the proper time. That is called being distracted, or the thing that I'm looking at is called a distraction. So back then, obviously, people didn't do homework on their computers, so they couldn't get distracted by a YouTube video. But they did get distracted by golf because it was so fun. So back then, a lot of people had to learn archery, which is using a bow and arrow, because they didn't have guns back then. So when the army would go and fight another army, they would use bows and arrows to fight each other instead of the modern weapons. So for the king, it's really important that his soldiers are really, really good at archery. So he's like, well, these are my soldiers. You need to be learning archery so you can protect me. So golf, it's not allowed anymore. You can't play it. So it's a little bit sad for the people who liked golf, but you can't say no to the king, especially back then. So here you can see this is James II. Here's a guy learning archery, but then, what's that? Golf. So he really likes golf, but James II, he's not too happy because he should be learning archery, but instead he's doing golf. So he banned it. He said it's not allowed. So he's sad, but you gotta make the king happy. Years later, his grandson, James IV, became a golfer and lifted the ban in 1502. Around that time, golf clubs began to emerge. So this guy right here, his name is also James. He was also the King of Scotland, but he was the grandson of James II, the guy right here. So James IV, he liked golfing. He thought it was fun. So he decided, actually, I'm gonna lift the ban. I'm going to make it okay for people to play golf again. So good news for the people who liked golf. And so around that time, golf clubs, or the little sticks that we know about that people play golf with, began to emerge. You began to see them. So people can find it if they dig in the ground. You can see around that time, golf clubs began to emerge. Many historians believe that golf began to spread globally after James the 6th of Scotland, succeeded to the throne of England in 1603. Many historians believe that golf began to spread globally after James IV of Scotland succeeded to the throne of England in 1603. So, right here, what does this word succeeded mean? Well, normally we would translate this word to something like 성공하다, to do well, to reap some kind of reward. But in this context, it actually means that James IV, he replaced the old king and became the new king of England. So you can see that when James IV, he got the crown, he became the king of England, and then England spread the golf that we know and love today all around the world. So, wow, who knew that the history of golf was so long and so interesting? I certainly didn't. So I really hope that you learned a lot from this article. I learned a lot of interesting stuff myself. And if you ever get the chance, I recommend that you go and play a round of golf. It's actually a really good sport for social distancing, and it's really fun and relaxing. So I hope that you go and have a good time and you remember the stuff that we learned today. All right, so that's all for this week, but make sure to like and subscribe and leave a comment or question if you have anything that you want to let us know. All right, see you next week. Bye.